Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Monday, July 29th, 2019. We're almost done here with the month of July, and actually, if you think about it, summer's probably almost half over. So, certainly the first two months of meteorological summer are done with. So, what do we have going forward in the short term? We're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at the weather across the United States, which actually, from the standpoint of what we've seen from time to time lately, is kind of on the quiet side. It's hot and it's humid, but it's the end of July. You would expect that. And there are a few thunderstorms around, and I think you would probably expect that. But we're going to take a look at the tropics tonight. I want to go through the action that's out in the Pacific, because we're probably going to have two tropical storms or possibly a hurricane. Both base systems will probably become hurricanes at some point. Erik and Flossie, and they're probably both going to make some kind of run at Hawaii. But if you look at the history of hurricanes in Hawaii, when they come in from the east, it is kind of like rolling, the bowling ball down the alley and attempting to hit the 10 pin. And it's not as easy as it seems. I know Hawaii just kind of sort of, in one respect, you look at Hawaii on a map and it looks just kind of like a target sitting out there waiting to be hit. But the reality is that most of the storms either go north or south. And even the ones that wind up going south, usually they wind up weakening as they approach the Hawaiian Islands for a number of reasons, including the fact that the ocean water temperatures there, while they are on the warm side, they're not like the kind of water temperatures that you see in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Northwest Caribbean, or even in the tropical and subtropical Atlantic. They are lower, and that kind of holds the storms back a bit. When we've seen a number of the storms that have actually hit Hawaii, they've formed inside the Central Pacific Development Zone, which is east of 140. Oftentimes they develop nearby or to the south of Hawaii and move northward. Some of the bigger storms have impacted Hawaii by coming in from a direction where they come up from the south. So we're going to take a look at all of this, and we're going to start off with a wide Pacific satellite view so you can see both storms in perspective and see how they are with respect to the Hawaiian Islands. And here we go. First off, we have Tropical Storm Erik is the one in the center of the picture. Pretty large circulation there, and you can see Hawaii off up to the upper left, not quite to the far left, but if you go to the upper left of where Erik is, you can see where the Hawaiian Islands are. Erik is at a, it's south, far enough south where it's got room to strengthen. The Pacific also has cooler than average ocean water temperatures that come down almost to about 20 degrees north, whereas in the Atlantic, it's more like 35 degrees north. So you have a little less room to maneuver, and right now, Erik is underneath that 20 degree threshold. It's actually underneath the 15 degrees north threshold. And on the far right, you can see Tropical Storm Flossie. Erik's winds are estimated at 70 miles an hour, Flossie's winds at 50 miles an hour, but both have well-defined circulations, and there's nothing out in the Pacific that suggests that these systems will turn to the north anytime soon. So they look like they're going to be marching across. We don't see a whole lot happening in terms of wind shear, at least immediately ahead of these systems. Conditions do appear favorable for strengthening, but at least for now, you'll notice south of the Hawaiian Islands, you have some disturbed weather there, but you also have clouds blowing off from west to east. So that's one of the other reasons why you don't see these storms hold together fairly well as they approach the Hawaiian Islands. Even the ones that stay further south, there almost seems to always be, just like we see in the Eastern Caribbean, there almost always seems to be some wind shear going on south of the Hawaiian Islands. So it's as if there's like this cone of protection over them that keeps them covered from these tropical systems, but no short-term threat from these. And we're going to also look at the Atlantic tropics in a moment. I just showed you the shot there. So here's what the Hurricane Center is doing with Erik as it strengthens it. Right now, as we said, on the last advisory, which was from at 11 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time, top winds were 70 miles an hour. It looks like it's close to hurricane status if you look at it on the satellite. If not tonight, certainly by tomorrow it will be. And the track is generally on a west-northwest course through the next 3 days or so. And we actually have the Hurricane Center briefly strengthening this to a major hurricane on Wednesday. May wind up getting there a bit faster and might be a major hurricane for a longer period of time. But then you'll notice that it passes by 8 a.m. Friday. It's forecast to be down around 16.5 or 17 north, and the Big Island of Hawaii is around 19.5 north. So you're talking about a good 150 miles south of the Big Island of Hawaii. That would probably suggest minimal impact, maybe some outer bands getting in there, and the track continuing west-northwest as a tropical storm. So at least from the standpoint of what we're seeing meteorologically out there, it would seem Erik is going to follow the form that a lot of these storms follow, which is to strengthen to a major hurricane as they approach 145, 150 west, and then once they get west of 150, they start that weakening process. Now, Flossie, being right behind it, might get tugged a little bit further north because of the, when you have these systems, when they pass by, they leave weaknesses, and storms that are right behind it tend to respond to those weaknesses. So here we have Flossie turning, on a west course, turning west-northwest steadily through the next 5 days. By Saturday morning, it's still not even quite to 145 west, but at this point, it's almost to 18 degrees north. So it seems as if the Hurricane Center is looking at this and saying that, you know what, this is going to wind up maybe turning west-northwest and going a little more to the right than what some of the guidance has, based on the fact that you've got Erik running out ahead of it. So two systems to watch here. And we'll jump over. I'm going to pull up first. We'll start with the GFS. I've got the we got the surface map here from the GFS on tropicaltidbits.com, and starting from yesterday, of course, you can see Erik in the picture on the lower right, moving west-northwestward. We're now into Wednesday morning. It's roughly at 15 and about 145, 146 west, right around there, and then continuing west-northwest. And actually, the GFS wants to turn it more westerly by the time we get to Thursday and Friday. So it passes south of the Big Island, and now you've got Flossie there in the picture, almost on the same latitude as Erik. Erik is weakening considerably as it keeps moving west. Still south of 20 degrees north, but between wind shear and slightly cooler ocean, you're going to see some weakening. And Flossie, according to the GFS, weakens and moves very close to the Hawaiian Islands. And this was on the last run. Look, it's in the air. It's in the realm of possibility that could happen. A lot is going to depend. You've got two strong ridges up to the north that are going to be in play here. Those two strong ridges are really going to be dictating an upper high that extends off the Atlantic, off the west coast of the U.S., and of course you've got another upper high out in the Atlantic. Here's how it looks up at even higher levels of the atmosphere. The upper highs are you've got one center here on Sunday was well to the northeast of the islands, another probably well northwest of the islands with a little weakness in the middle. And you've got the storms kind of responding. Erik initially responds to that weakness, but there's enough of a ridge where it deflects it westward and it's almost gone. And then Flossie, you see here, moving west-northwestward, and then he kind of loses it also as we move into early next week. So the European I think if I remember correctly, the European was suggesting that there might be more ridging up to the north. And let's bring up the anomaly on the surface so you can follow them this way. The European's kind of on the same page with Erik as it takes it west-northwest and then turns it westward south of the Big Island. Flossie, kind of on the same page as the GFS, where it takes it west-northwest, weakens it considerably as it approaches the Big Island of Hawaii by Sunday night and Monday. So kind of back-to-back here with these two particular systems. And we'll spend more time on this tomorrow and Wednesday as we get closer and see just exactly what we're going to be dealing with, because at this point right now, obviously, we're pretty much in the speculative phase of all of this. Now, there's one last view of the two storms, and let's go to the Atlantic side, because we did have this morning when I looked at the loop, and Patreon members, if you got, I posted it fairly quickly this morning, right before it degenerated. From overnight, there was actually what looked like a mid-level circulation of some kind in the Caribbean. And I was looking at the surface winds too, and it almost looked like there might even have been some hint of a very weak surface low developing. But since then, you can see what's happened here. You don't really see any signs of turning anymore. A lot of the clouds have been blown off to the northeast. You've got wind shear, strong upper level winds, which of course is grossly unfavorable for development. And we've lost any semblance of any kind of mid-level circulation from what we had earlier today. Now, this wave, this tropical wave, will eventually find its way north of Puerto Rico and north of the Dominican Republic, where conditions may, when it gets there in the latter part of this week, might be a little bit more favorable for development. And since we saw a tropical depression, a weak one, form in the Bahamas, what was it back last week, early last week? You couldn't really rule out the possibility that something may try to develop out of this. But it's hard to imagine anything from the standpoint of strength developing. We just don't seem to have the upper air conditions yet in the Atlantic that would be favorable for any kind of significant tropical storm development. And here's the wider view of the tropical Atlantic and the subtropical Atlantic. You can see the wave that's in the eastern Caribbean. There are a couple of waves. Looks like a rather strong tropical wave has just come off the African coast, but whether it holds together or not as it moves westward remains to be seen, and not really seeing ideal conditions in the upper air moving west across the Atlantic. You see some wind shear going on. Also, the hazy area off the African coast to the north is some more Saharan dust, and you can also see some of that back in the northeast of the Leeward Islands. You can see a little bit of dust there getting involved. So we just still don't have really ideal conditions in the Atlantic for any kind of tropical cyclone development going forward. So we'll just have to see what this wave does. I was just kind of, really shocked this morning to see this swirl in the eastern Caribbean. I thought, whoa, definitely a mid-level circulation there, but it was the winds today really took care of that, and now just a large area, massive clouds and showers with no real organization to it. Meanwhile, let's go back home where we have a hot day. We've had a hot day and a humid day, and of course we are off the highs of the day. From the standpoint of dew points, we are not where we were last Monday and the weekend of the extreme heat, where we had dew points in the low to mid 70s. The dew points have actually, while uncomfortable, they were a bit more reasonable than that, mostly in the middle to upper 60s. A few spots saw some dew points up around the 70 degree mark, but there wasn't anything too crazy. And I'm going to put up the radar on here. We did have some pop-up storms not a little while ago in parts of the Hudson Valley, and we still do. You can see there was the severe thunderstorm warning and also flash flood warning that went up for parts of the Hudson Valley and Dutchess County in particular. Looks like that first lead cell, there was an east-west band north of Poughkeepsie. We're right now at 79, so they were just kind of on the edge of that. But from Ulster County eastward into Dutchess County, now it looks like a cell might be firing up north and west of Poughkeepsie. And there are a few scattered cells in parts of upstate New York. You can see them there, sandwiched between Utica to Syracuse, and then down west of Binghamton, seeing a few cells. Not much happening up in northern and interior New England. Few cells in southeastern New England and parts of Rhode Island and in southeastern Massachusetts. A little bit of scattered activity in northeastern Virginia. Johnny Quest, they're on the other side of the mountains for you. A couple of scattered cells in and around the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area and down through Virginia and North Carolina, but nothing really out of the ordinary. Look at the dew points down, by the way, you get down into the Carolinas, and you've got dew points down in the 60s and 50s. So, the air has actually moistened up further north faster than it did across the southeast. So there's actually a bit of a lack of activity in terms of diurnal pop-up showers and thunderstorms in the southeastern part of the U.S. And even let's head down into Florida and take a look. And we do have some action going on south of Tampa, down toward Cape Coral, inland though. You're seeing some showers and thunderstorms. Sebring Regional Airport's at 75, which is a far cry from areas on the other side near the coast, which are sitting at the 90-degree mark. So kind of a typical late July day, really. Not a whole lot happening. I just want to go back to the area in the Caribbean. And this morning when we were looking at the surface winds, this buoy had a north wind. So there was some kind of low level, there might have been the beginnings of some kind of low level center. But again, you could see the destruction here in terms of these surface winds are now all east or east-southeast. So any sense that there might have been a low level circulation is obviously gone. So now on the radar tonight, and it's refreshing for me. Thank you very much. Now here's the next cold front, and it's producing some downpours and thunderstorms from eastern Michigan down through central Indiana, western Kentucky, western Tennessee into Arkansas, and down into parts of North Texas. This is the one area where we are seeing a marginal risk of severe weather today from the Storm Prediction Center. But east of there, again, from Maine down into northern Florida and west into Ohio and Kentucky until you get to those actual storms. Other than the pop-ups that are going on, and by the way, if you look at where the pop-ups are in North Georgia, eastern Tennessee, they basically are happening right along the spine of the Appalachians. But the area is very narrow and totally unimpressive from what I can see. All right, so we'll take a look at where we're going in the upper air in the coming 10 days to 2 weeks. We'll start with the European model run. And, of course, folks, what has been the running theme lately? The running theme has been that we have this jet stream active along the Canadian border that ebbs and flows, and you get short waves that bring the southern part of the jet stream down into the mid-Atlantic states, only to pull it back up. When it moves south, we get these shots of drier air and slightly cooler air. When it pulls north, it turns very warm and humid, and these changes keep coming every 3 or 4 days. So here's the next trough for Wednesday. It's nowhere near as deep as the one we had last Monday. It's a short wave that's going to be approaching the coast and moving on through. The bulk of the energy is further north up into Canada, into southeastern Canada, so that pulls out. A little energy gets left behind for Thursday and Friday. So that tells me that the front is either going to weaken and fall apart along the East Coast after it goes by, or it may just kind of stall out and you get a couple of weak waves that develop on it and then the front basically falls apart. You'll have to just wait for something stronger to occur. And after next weekend, we've got another trough. This is the Europeans' view. This showing, at least by day 10, we're at August 8th now, a sizable upper low there north of Lake Superior with probably a pretty good shortwave that is swinging across the northern plains and into the Great Lakes. So this would suggest that we'll probably have another stronger front coming in after next week. Start looking at that maybe when we're sitting here a week from today. We'll probably be looking at some sort of stronger cold front approaching. The GFS, and of course we've got the new run of the GFS now, so we can take a look at how it's handling things. GFS has been guilty lately of kind of over amplifying what it was going to bring through for this week, and it does have, it's kind of on board here with what the European has, which is a bit of a weaker trough in the east, and actually has a secondary shortwave swinging around in eastern Canada, dropping down for Sunday. So if that's correct, it suggests to me that it would be nice, and we'll probably have some decent dry air pushing down into the northeast and mid-Atlantic states as far out as we go, which is to Tuesday, August 6th on this run. You've got some troughing left down in the central Gulf, and you've got another shortwave that's coming into the northern plains, which is where, what the European had. Now, from earlier today, that trough swung, and this is where the GFS really kind of went a bit strongly with this troughing in the east as we go through August 8th, 9th, and 10th. It has several short waves rotating in the flow and would certainly imply for a rather interesting, cool air mass to come down out of Canada into the eastern part of the United States. It actually brings the base of that trough down into the northern Gulf of Mexico and off the southeast coast. So this would suggest that dry air, this will be another one of these systems where the dry air makes it pretty far down to the south, which would be rather unusual. Now, here's how it looks on the surface. I'm thinking that tomorrow will be much like today, up and down the East Coast. The front will be a little bit closer, so your showers and storms will probably be more like eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, down into Tennessee, reaching the coast Wednesday afternoon. And then with that front just kind of laying offshore, does a wave develop on it or doesn't it? I think that's the big question. Even if it does, it doesn't look like it would involve any kind of washout. It's just that it would involve probably showing some showers and thunderstorms running around. And you can see that the GFS wants to linger these into Saturday, dropping that next short wave down. And here we are on Sunday. There's some kind of cold front that's running through Maine, across New York State, back to southern Michigan, into Wisconsin, as higher pressure builds down from Canada. So this would at least suggest that maybe Sunday into Monday of next week, we get a shot of dry air from the north. Here comes the next stronger front, with that deep trough that we were telling you about. Big high goes down into the Dakotas, and the front makes it down into the southeast and down into the Gulf states by later next week. Look, the bottom line is, when you look at the overall pattern with respect to what we have had really for since June, since a good part of the month of June, there hasn't really been much change to all of this, where you've got kind of a blocky look to things up in the northern, up in the North Atlantic and over Greenland. So your jet in Canada is displaced farther south than it otherwise would be, and you keep getting these short waves that are coming through, producing these troughs in the eastern part of the United States. I mean, this was actually rather impressive for this time of year to see a trough this deep. Now, I will point out a couple of things. If we're going into August now, so you're going to start to see these air masses from Canada. They will be getting a little bit cooler with each progressive cold front, assuming that each one comes with a sizable short wave to bring it down. The days are getting shorter. Clearly, we're well past. They're going to start losing daylight rather quickly So it is going to begin. You're going to be seeing a normal fall of temperatures in the northern latitudes. So your air masses are going to start to get cooler over time. And the other thing is that even though the trough is in the east, it's it's rather broad in nature. So anything that's in the tropics that finds itself in the Bahamas, say, or if it were to find itself just east of the Bahamas with the trough like this in the east, it would go north and then northeast and then maybe east-northeast south of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Not saying there's going to be one, but the position and depth of this trough and the structure of this trough would not be conducive to bring something up the east coast. Now, taking that a step further, over time, if you want to believe this, the GFS wants to build the ridge of the Atlantic back to the coast. Now, here's where you have more of a southerly flow. So this might be something that would be something that would catch our attention if we were to see some sort of tropical system approaching the southeast coast. This is 2 weeks from now. It's not going to look like this. The model's going to change. But I'm just illustrating here that this upper air is different in terms of what you would get from a track as opposed to this particular one. And the bottom line is that the overall pattern, as I said, that we've had since probably early to mid-June has held, and I don't see it really changing anytime soon. Let's just take a look at what WPC has to say as far as rainfall is concerned for this week. And of course, you've got with the possibility of a front stalling just offshore and then hanging back in the Carolinas, you do have the WPC folks emphasizing some big rains in North Carolina, Southern Virginia, and into parts of South Carolina on the order of some 5-inch plus amounts, and also for Central and South Florida down to the Keys, showing also some 3, 4, 5-inch amounts over the next 7 days. Far less, 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches spread out across parts of the Northeast. Another bullseye zone in Missouri and in through Iowa, where we've got some 3 and 4-inch amounts there, and then on up from the southwest into the Rockies and into the central western, the west central plains, with some 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, 2-inch amounts being indicated in that particular area. And just to quickly, before I come back to the chat board, just show you the SPC, Storm Prediction Centers, the marginal risk of severe weather tonight: eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, across Arkansas, northwest Louisiana, and then in a sort of a narrow sliver that runs up into through western Kentucky and into Indiana and western Ohio, and also 2 marginal risk areas in parts of Colorado, Nebraska, northwest Kansas, and eastern Wyoming, and another one in western Wyoming and in through southern Idaho. So that pretty much covers it, folks. At least, I thought I'd do the Pacific Tropics today, if only because of the fact that I'm out of practice. Okay, so I wanted to at least get a view on what's happening. PRJ Grudge, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's 2 cigars for me to finish off the month. Scott Briller asking, most major cities have their airports as the official reporting station. Any reason the biggest? New York City's always had Central Park. Central Park's been there since 1869. It was there before airports and airplanes. So and I think they may not be the only one. I think there are others that have. There are a few other places I think that have a non-airport facility as their main area, their main temperature gauge. I'm trying to think of one's not coming to the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that there are a couple here and there. But look, the bottom line is you don't live in airports, although some people would argue that point. Because some people would say that they live in airports all the time with the amount of traveling they're doing. But Newark, LaGuardia in particular, they're doing a lot of construction on. at LaGuardia. There's always a ton of traffic and exhaust over there. I'm sure that's got to have some impact with regards to temperature. PRJ Grudge in South Carolina. This stalling front for later this week might bring some rains to you. So we'll have to see how that front lines up with regards to the maximum rainfalls are concerned. And, just going back, Scott, with respect to Central Park, that thermometer is over at the zoo. It's on grass and probably there's a lot of shade around there. I don't know if there's shade over where the thermometer or the shelter is in and of itself, but I kind of regard that probably as a better reading overall than LaGuardia or Newark, where they're sitting on a runway. But look, it's hot. I'll guarantee you that. Either way, when you are in Manhattan on the pavement, it is hot. Fast Mag SS. You're new and welcome to my YouTube channel, and thank you for subscribing. You're by way of New Jersey, and I went through Sandy, but what I am going get in what am I going to get? You've got rain coming for North Carolina, as we just showed you on the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast map. With this stalling front later this week, you're likely to see some heavier rain, some heavier thunderstorms with some downpours. I don't know how much of a wave you're going to get to develop on that front, but there's enough there with all the moisture around and the given the time of year, you're probably going to have some decent downpours and thunderstorms develop toward the second half of the week. Jess Harden and a severe drought in central Alabama. Jess, you're getting these dry air masses coming down from Canada and going so far to the south. It really has cut down. Usually on a typical afternoon on the radar, you're going to see all sorts of pop-up showers and thunderstorms. There's hardly anything going on with respect to that across up and down the East Coast until you get into central, down to Central and South Florida. There's very, very little activity. Now, that's all going to change later when this front comes through here this week at midweek on Wednesday and beyond. That's going to change things. You're going to start to see the southeast saturate with some tropical moisture. So that should help as far as generating some showers and thunderstorms. But in terms of widespread activity, at least down by your way, it might be a little lacking. This may be more north and east of you going into South Carolina and Georgia. CA, I think that's FL, I can't see. CA, I'm not sure what symbol that is that follows, but whoever you are, thank you for being on the channel, and thank you for signing up. What kind of camera do I use to live stream? I don't know what, hang on. There's a little portable Microsoft camera here that attaches to the screen. I could show it to you, but the problem is if I pull it off, it's going to change the shot. You won't, I need, if I would have to use a camera on the computer. This particular computer doesn't have a camera on its own, but it's a little portable one that you can get on Amazon or on Best Buy. Oh, and if you do get it on Amazon, you could use my Amazon link, by the way, which is on the descriptor to this live stream. Shameless self-promotion on my part. But I have at home, when I do the live streams at home, I use a Logitech camera that I have attached to my computer. It's a separate one from the one that's on the computer itself, because it gives me a little bit more mobility by using the portable camera, and I think the shot on it is actually a little bit better than the computer generated one, than the camera that's on the computer. But it's so easy to do, and to stream live, I use an open source software program that you can download on the internet for free. It's called OBS, open source broadcast, OBS broadcast, and just download it and use it. It's free. It's like WordPress for websites. Okay, Shamul Biston. If you're relatively new, so let me just tell you, and for those of you who are new, I don't long-range forecast, okay? It's not my thing. There are a lot of folks that are out there that that are into the long range, and I totally get that, and I totally respect it. For me, I have never been able to really get my head around it. There's just so much to look at, and all this technical stuff. I don't know. It doesn't really interest me that much to look at stuff 3, 4, 5 months ahead of time and talk about it in broad generalities. I would much rather deal with the here and now and stay inside a 10-day to 2-week time frame in terms of trying to figure things out. And I'll tell you something. I guess even if I did, there's a very high probability that even if I said something in the most general of ways, to apply it to an entire geography, an entire coastline, an entire state, where the climate ranges are so wide from one place to another, it would get lost in the translation, and I just don't think it would do very much good. So I'll leave the long range stuff to the guys who do it on a regular basis. I will say this, however, if we have this pattern continuing through the month of August, with this jet stream that keeps wanting to dip southward into the United States and push its way pretty far to the south, if that does continue to happen and hold, and right now I don't see anything that says that pattern is going to break down anytime soon, then we may get some fairly interesting shots of cooler air through the middle and latter part of the month of August. But that's a big if. It would assume that the pattern we're in now stays pretty much the same thing. Joe Gaffney, when it's too quiet, this period of calm is certainly welcome. It will come to an end at some point. It's not going to stay like this forever. I like to take advantage of that. That's why the weekend I didn't do anything. I did a minimal amount of posting on my website. Patreon folks got their posts, but even there, I kept it to a minimum because when the weather is calm, I like to spend a little downtime. And there really wasn't much to write about, and plus it's a weekend, and it was a nice weekend over a lot of the East, where much of my audience is. You're out doing stuff. It's the summertime. It's July. You're very good, Fast Mag SS. You're very kind words. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it that you're here, and thank you for the kindness. Do I think temps? I don't know about 70s, Stephen. 80s, yeah, I think that'll be, and maybe on the lower end of 80s for a day or so. With maybe if we get lucky, we can get the dew points to come down on one of those days over the weekend. But we'll see. We'll see how how this all trends later in the week. It's going to depend on that. Where the front stalls and whether you get a decent wave to develop it or not. Joe Rayo's doing well. We haven't been doing too much together because between our schedules and vacation time, we were never off together. So either if I take time off, he can't be off. So then when I come back, he takes his time off, and vice versa. So with the weather being quiet, we've just been kind of taking it easy to get on doing shows together. Brian Judkins, across the pond, you broke your all-time high at 101.7 confirmed by the UK Met Office. I imagine that was probably in southwestern England. I noticed that there were some temperatures up at around over 100 and 101. That was some, that was some shot of heat for you guys, and down into France, Paris getting, I think it was 108, which was an all-time high. That was absolutely incredible. And actually, that heat wave was broken by a pretty strong storm system that came through. And I think I read where there was something like 40,000 strikes of lightning strikes during the 24 or 36 hour period when the heat wave was broken, with the weather front going by across much of England. There was an article. I think on BBC, on the BBC website. I posted it on my Facebook page, by the way. If you want to read it, because it actually did it with maps, and you could see where all the highs were. It was very, very impressive indeed. Chuck Cardillo, you're always losing internet up there in the Catskills. Just kidding you. You know that. So you were here, you have disappeared, and now you have come back, which is good. And you've come back at a time that I'm going to have to wrap this up because it's coming up on 7 Eastern time. David Aruda, the conveyor belt is starting to rev up a little bit, all coming off the African coast. Let's give it another week or so to see if any of those waves are going to have some impact. All right, so thanks for being here tonight. By the way, I mentioned there's a link to Amazon, and I'm going to put it up on the chat board. This is an easy way to support my channel because it doesn't cost you a thing. If you shop on Amazon using my link, you get your stuff, and Amazon throws me some coin to get some cigars, and it's totally out of their pocket and not yours. And we want to mention that we're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. So thanks very much for being here. Chris Alley, it was great seeing you this weekend. Chris and I ran into each other. We've known each other for years, and Chris and I ran into each other on Fire Island this weekend, where the weather was absolutely spectacular. You were going to the casino night, and I was having dinner with friends. But it was really great to see you. Patreon folks, for those of you who want a more intensive weather experience, don't forget there's my weather platform on Patreon. I put the link up on there. It's just $2 a month. And during this hurricane season, we're going to be doing extra stuff for Patreon members, and that won't be around on the website or anywhere else. Plus the fact that the Patreon members get Weather in 10, which is their own weather video when weather is active, and everybody gets Weather in 5, which is up in the mornings. So be sure to catch that. I do a quick 5-minute summary of what's happening weather-wise every morning, and we call it Weather in 5, and that's right here on YouTube. So thanks again for being here tonight. Have a great night and a great week ahead. We'll keep an eye on Erik and Flossie, and we'll see you.